We finally have some good news out of this war, and it's really hard to say it's good news, but it is good news. It's the beginning of the end for Hamas, and that's the word from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. There were reports of some Hamas fighters actually surrendering to Israeli troops in Gaza, and he's calling on more terrorists to lay down their arms and end the fighting. Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
Dozens more Hamas terrorists have surrendered. The videos show them stripped down to make sure they're not carrying any explosives or suicide belts. The IDF says these surrenders show Hamas is crumbling, but cautioned it's still far from the end.
There are a great many terrorists who have surrendered there, and this is a significant thing because these are signs that terrorists who are in difficult strongholds have decided to surrender. This is a very important thing.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called out for more Hamas members to surrender.
It will take more time. The war is in full swing, but this is the beginning of the end for Hamas. I say to the Hamas terrorists, it is over. Don't die for Sinwar. Surrender now.
The UN General Assembly is scheduled to vote on a non-binding resolution demanding a ceasefire in Gaza. Netanyahu thanked the U.S. for its veto last Friday against the binding Security Council resolution calling for a ceasefire.
Other countries should also understand that it is impossible, on the one hand, to support the elimination of Hamas, and on the other hand, to call for an end to the war that will prevent the elimination of Hamas.
New developments raise concerns of a widening war, as Hezbollah increased its rocket fire into northern Israel over the weekend, and the Iranian-backed Houthis in Yemen threatened to block any ships carrying supplies to Israel. Meanwhile, in the U.S. Senate, two opposing views on the war between Senators Lindsey Graham and Bernie Sanders. Citing civilian casualties in Gaza, Sanders told CBS Face the Nation it would be irresponsible for the U.S. to give Netanyahu another $10 billion to wage Israel's war against Hamas. But at a conference in Qatar, Senator Graham said the U.S. has Israel's back.
The last time a bunch of people tried to kill all the Jews 80 years ago, there was no Israel. So the one thing I can tell you, if it's your goal to kill all the Jews, you're going to have one hell of a fight on your hands. And the United States of America is going to stand with Israel without animosity toward the Palestinians.
On the international front, thousands of Europeans in Berlin and Brussels marched against anti-Semitism.
Because there is a huge increase of anti-Semitism in Belgium since October 7. We witness more than 1,000% of increase. So we are living in a very complicated period. And also to send a message to the Jewish community of Belgium to tell them that they are not alone.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, I want to tell them they're not alone either. And I absolutely want to underline to every government in Europe and our own government here in the United States and Canada and the UN, we should not put pressure on Israel. The pressure should be put where it properly belongs, and that is, let us put pressure on Hamas. They need to unconditionally surrender. They need to give up all the hostages. They are the bad actor here. It's not Israel's fault that we're in this situation. The fault is entirely and exclusively on Hamas. So, unconditional surrender, the same thing that Roosevelt said to Nazi Germany long ago. We're not going to come to peace negotiations. We're coming to take over. And that's exactly what needs to happen with Hamas.